everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. This is your extra show for the week. My name is Cammy Bell. I'm your host, as always. And joining me on the show this week for what I think will be a fairly interesting discussion about a few different Rangers-related topics as we look forward to also heading across to Falkirk for our next cup final in this league title run-in is Kev Armstrong. Kev, thanks so much for joining me, buddy.
Always a pleasure to be on Extra, mate. Good to be here, and yes, the world of Rangers is never slow. Well, that's a lie, Cammy, because the last few years at this time of year it has tended to be quite slow, but this year it is not for various reasons.
No, that's true. That's true, and we've got a bit to discuss, but let's kick off, Kev. We have to bring it kind of closer to home, and that is the rumours that have been going around in the last couple of days that it looks like Ryan Nadiri may have picked up an injury. Now, a little bit of kind of word of warning, we know absolutely nothing about whether or not it's true or not. I'd love to sit here, Kev, and say that we do this pod, and then all of a sudden we find out actually Nadiri's perfectly fine. The problem is that I've heard it from too many places, and it's so beautifully Rangers that we would have a fairly crucial injury at this point on a season that is not been like too many we've had in the last few years, but it's just our luck that Nadiri would end up missing out. And he scores the goal against Dundee United at Ibrox last week, and you're just thinking to yourself, my word, what else can go wrong?
It's the Connorman law. I think David Edgar has christened it. It's never the rubbish ones, is it? It's never our third choice goalkeeper will be out for 6 weeks and doesn't really affect us. It's always the best left back.
Andy Firth was the healthiest man in Scotland.
Yes,
that's a medical fact.
Like it's never the best left back in the world to rumours. I mean, he's absolutely been incredible for us. He goes out for a couple of weeks. Nadiri, who there was a few questions around what he actually done, but I think when you analyse it and really look at his game, you can see how important he is to us, just to really free up Chermiti and act as that foil for him. And of course, we've seen at the weekend when he was asked to lead the line himself for that first half, he done remarkably well. He got one goal, maybe two, depending on how over the line that Sterling one was, and then should have had an assist with Asgard when he rolled the ball to him to knock in. So not a bad first half's work. And then, of course, yes, he gets injured because, well, of course he does.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think what's been interesting with the various conversations that I've had about people, and it's not a new thing, right? So it's not like as if it's just happened in the last week or so, but I think Nadiri, when he came in midway through the season, got a lot of pressure put onto him because we were obviously keen to get the deal done, right? I think that's fair to say. There was a bit of back and forth with Rostock. It was obviously going to be a blow to them losing them, so I've got no issue with clubs to a certain extent holding your feet to the fire to get what they feel is an adequate amount of compensation in the transfer fee. But what ended up, I think, happening, Kev, was that we then started to look at, well, Chermiti's not scoring regularly. Miovski, hasn't been scoring anywhere near enough. So this is a guy that we need to be able to try and get goals. And through no fault of his own, it kind of felt like as if Nadiri fell into that default position. Whereas in the cold light of day, and you're being slightly dispassionate about it, you know that players need time to bed in. They've made a big change. It's a step up in levels. It was probably an unfair thing to think that he could come in and hit the ground running straight away. But then as he has started to settle in, and I don't think he's had too many poor performances. Like, I think I could count them in, maybe one or two where I thought, maybe not great. But by and large, I think he does a lot of work off the ball. I think he does a lot of running, which moves opposition players about, which creates space for others. Our problem is that we've not got that out-and-out goal scorer with three strikers. So for me, Nadiri is going to be a huge miss because, as I say, I think he did a lot of intelligent running. I thought his finish was really good, but you've got to be in the right space at the right time. So there's a little bit there around, his predatory instincts and making sure that he could finish off that shot for Asgard. But it's just, I'm gutted because you would hope that as we get into this squeaky bum time of the title running, a goal really would have helped him and it would have helped to boost his confidence. We are going to talk about the same thing with Bojan Miovski, but yeah, it's just it's going to be a loss. There's no two ways around it.
The thing is, as well, it's a big step up for him, not just in levels, but in the physical demands coming from the German third division to the Scottish Premier League. Now, we always sort of talk down our game, but there is that physical demand. I don't know Rostock's fixtures off by heart, but we know Rangers tend to play every 20 minutes. So it's a big ask, and he's still quite a young guy. But like you said, the situation we were in, we needed him to come in, we needed him to play, and we needed them to do really, really well right away. So there's a lot of pressure there, and we've just not had the option to rotate. I mean, there's been a lot of talk the last week about the sort of drop-off from our starters to our substitutes and strikers. There's, as you say, there's not been one standout where you go, we've got that Chris Boyd or Nacho Novo, that goal scorer there, and then everything else can sort of work around them. We don't have that. But yeah, I've been quite happy with Nadiri. It's a shame. It is a shame if it's true. Now, of course, we could all look really silly, Cammy, if he turns out on Sunday and he starts and plays the 90 minutes. But as you say, there's Rangers normally quash these things if there's no substance to it. But yes, yeah. Just on a sort of wider point as well, I've been really quite happy with most of the January signings. Of course, there is the one right-wing elephant in the room of Skov Olsen, who I'm sure we might touch on at some point. But the rest of them, I think they're fitted in well. But I don't think it's a shock. Like, you see Chukwani, he tires a wee bit in games. Romans obviously came in carrying an injury. So I don't think it's a shock that he's been down injured as well, because playing at Rangers is tough. It's physically tough.
And he's this is going to sound silly, but I think you'll know what I mean. He's looked fit, and I think what he's tried to do, Romans, is, you know, he covers a lot of yardage, and maybe it's just been the case that we know that he did have a knock. Chukwani was the same. I think they both missed periods of football before they came to the club. But Romans, I think, really wanted to come in and properly impress himself with the amount of distance that he covered, and I don't think he looked sluggish. The Chukwani point, I think, is totally right. So we know, of course, there is a difference between regular fitness and match fitness. And I didn't think that Romans struggled at all, but maybe now in hindsight, it's maybe the case of, well, could we have managed them a little bit better in terms of minutes, etc. What I will say, Kev, is that I think actually the Nadiri injury is worse than Romans, because I still think Jade Magoma is a decent left back. I think he's got room to improve, and I think he's got development, etc. But we needed covering at left back, and for me, I think Romans has probably been the key signing of the January window, because he's come in and he's been able to look even better than the guy that he's stepped in to support. But you can't deny his quality. He is going to be a miss. The Nziri one, which then obviously does move the focus onto Miovski, depending on how we play this, and this is what I'm keen to kind of get your thoughts on, because we've seen that Danny Rule is keen to go with, assuming that everybody's fit to do so, the two striker option. So what I'd be keen to understand is whether or not, if he does then default that to Chermiti and Miovski, or does he allow either one to lead the line and then potentially have someone sitting in behind him from the midfield? Immediate thoughts start going towards Telo Asgard.
He's an enigma, isn't he? I think I said in the car pod at the weekend that most of us get frustrated with Asgard, not because we want him to do things he's incapable of doing. It's because he clearly has ability and has proven it in flashes this season. You mentioned the goal at the weekend. Opens up the game by taking a step inside, beating a man or two, and unleashing a good shot from distance, which is wonderfully followed up by Nadiri. But Asgard makes that goal. And then you see the other side of him when he's got an open goal. He just has to step on and tap it in, but he just wants too much time. He relaxes, and the chance is gone. I never get annoyed with players when I want them to do things they're incapable of doing. I don't want 5-foot wingers crunching into tackles and winning headers against centre backs that are 6'7". Right? I don't expect that. That's fine. But when someone's got the ability to do things, you just want to unlock that. Asgard scored a lot of big goals for us this year. I think he's going to be really important in the run-in. but it's just, it's so hard, and it must be frustrating as a manager that you know a player can do these things. And I'll sort of drift on to Scott Olsen here as well, because Asgard at the start of the season was doing that thing that Olsen's doing, where he would get the ball, he would do a shimmy, and he would just knock it back, and then sort of jog back and say, "I'm marked, so you need to go somewhere else." But recently, he started showing flashes. I think it was over like Christmas time. He's like four or five goals in a row. Really crucial goals for us. So hopefully there's a few more to come, because we're going to need everyone that can score goals over the next few weeks. The formation thing is a bit strange, and I always wonder with managers, because I think if you've got two fit strikers and you start two up top and it's not working, I just wonder if they always like that extra striker on the bench to bring on, just for a bit of freshness. So I wonder how much of that's in his mind as well. Plus, for whatever reason, I just do not think he does not rate Bojan Miovski. Danny Rule obviously sees a lot more of him than we do in training and whatnot, but I don't think he is a fan of his. But again, if you're going to stick up for Miovski, he should be sitting here with 2 goals in his last 2 games. A wee bit of, how would you put it? I don't want to say dodgy officiating, but a bit overzealous with the handball rule. Denied him 2 good goals in 2 weeks, which again will only put more confidence into him.
What word would you use? Fuckery would probably be a good one, and I apologise for the language, but I can't not swear when I talk about Scottish officials. Yeah, listen, I agree with that. What I like about Asgard, from what we've seen of him, and this is the frustrating thing, is its consistency, right? I think we can all kind of agree on that, because there are times where, and I remember this a couple of weeks ago against Aberdeen. See, when he has the ball at his feet, he's nimble. He can get himself out of trouble. I don't think he has any issues going past players. So there's a footballing brain in there. When you look at his physique, you mentioned earlier on, the physicality of the Scottish game. Asgard should be able to dominate a lot more than he does. But the Nadiri goal, I always call it the Asgard goal because it was practically as good as. But the Nadiri goal, Asgard starts that whole move off by beating 2 players 20, 25 yards out for goal, and then he has a pop. How many times can we legitimately say that we're seeing all of that this season from our midfielders? Chikmani obviously scored from outside the area a couple of weeks ago. I think it was his first Rangers goal. And we've been crying out for a bit more of that, even just to be able to try and test the keeper. And then you see what results you get. Either, you get a shot on target, you force a save. Hopefully it drops. I mean, it's bad goalkeeping because it does fall straight from the Nadiri. He's got a relatively straightforward tap in. But that's what we wanted from the midfielders, is to be able to get forward and to be able to create something, when a big part of the reason why we've ran out of patience at times is that we've played a bit too safe. That was probably more prevalent at the beginning of the season, but we've played too safe, and it's a centre half knocking it to the goalkeeper, a goalkeeper to centre half to centre half, and it felt like as if we were just getting contained a little bit too much. So what we ideally want to see is more of this idea of, when you get the ball forward, and if you get it to an 8 or a 10, for example, but someone who's able to create something on the back of that, more centrally, I would say, because I think we can rely a little bit too much on our wingers at times to be able to try and do something and either get to the byline or cut inside and have a shot and what have you. But being able to try and mix up centrally would definitely help in the middle of the park. And this is probably where, and I said this a few weeks ago, Kev, right? And I think the same is still true now. Danny Rule has got 13, 14, 15 players in that squad that he knows he can trust. And there's guys sitting outside of that bracket, and they haven't featured too much. But right now, as things stand, and as the way how our title run-in has shaped up, it is about being able to turn to the guys next day and saying, can you go and get a win at Easter Road? Can you go and get, the game against St Mirren was a great example. Not pretty football, and I thought we were better, but it's about getting that result. Sometimes it is about having to dig in and being able to try and produce something. And the reason is the one I'm talking about now, because people might listen to this and go, Jesus, we scored 8 goals in our last 2 games. Do you know what I mean? 3 flowing football, blah, blah. We're form, everything else as well. That's grand. But again, this is where you take a couple of guys out of the team, and you're then having to rely on people. If you haven't said that to them a few weeks ago, then I think you've got problems, because everyone's in it together. Everyone has to be in it together, because we don't have a starting 11 that will win this league, is my honest opinion.
It's true. In many ways, Asgard probably sums up this Rangers squad for me, where on his day, playing at his best, he's the best in the country, right? Going full throttle, everything we mentioned, right? Skill, ability, can score a goal, take a shot, driving with power. On his day is the absolute best. But the minute you lower your level, there's not much to lose behind you, right? That people will catch you and people will overtake you the minute you drop your level. And for vast periods at the start of the season, our levels were far too low. The manager spoke, Cammy, about working with a small squad. I think that's the way he likes it. I would suspect in the summer that we will see sort of the squad trimmed a wee bit and focus on more quality than quantity. But right now, again, you hear him speak about how he wants players, not without naming them, right, but like Miovski, to come in and produce something. What you've said is exactly right. He wants it to be one. It doesn't matter if you start or if you finish the game, you have something to contribute here in this run-in. There's certain players that have come in, and I always speak on the preview on Patreon about, if you're not playing, you need to get a chance, maximise your minutes. Make it impossible for you not to start the next game. Gassama at the weekend, I think we've all been really critical of him playing on the right. I thought he was outstanding when he came in on Saturday. But then there's other ones like, who am I thinking of? Bajrami, who's come in, had chances and never really nailed down a place. There will be, like you say, the manager will know. Every football manager knows, Cammy, I can count on him, not so much him, and he'll have an idea, but he will probably need to get some more out of certain players because of the lack of depth that we've got. But Danny Rule, I said to you before we started recording, I just watched our previous meeting with Falkirk back in November. Somehow they managed to squeeze 6 minutes of highlights out of it, despite not a lot happening. The improvement that Danny Rule has made in this team and this squad since then has been remarkable. And right at the top of the show, you said that we've got 6 cup finals left. How many can we and do we need to win?
Yeah, and that's where it's always interesting, and I'd love to ask a footballer about this, that because you'll never hear footballers ever really kind of coming out and necessarily slagging off teams or whatever, but you must know, if you are Bijrami, for example, right? How much realistically am I going to play for the remainder of the season? Injuries aside, I'm probably not going to get called on that much. So do you make a decision at that stage to say, right, well, I'm going to do whatever I can, that if I am having to come into games, even if it's to help spare the legs of others, is to come in and just make sure that I do my absolute utmost? Or if I can probably see the light for the end of the tunnel, that I'm likely to leave in the summer, how committed am I? What really do I want to do here? Do I want to risk potentially sabotaging a move if I get a knock or whatever? Or in some players' cases, I'll do what I need to, rather than being able to try and bust the gut. And that's not against Bijrami, by the way. I'm just saying, I think it's interesting that we talk about these fringe players who you hope are all committed to the cause, and maybe supporting the guys in front of them to say, I'll give you a bit of pressure for your position, or I'm going to be able to try and. But actually, if I know that the manager has got question marks over me, I think it's a hard thing to do in any walk of life, Kev, to say, well, do you know what? I'm going to stand up to that. If my manager, my boss, thinks I'm no great shakes, well, now I'm going to prove you wrong. And I think it's a big character that has to be able to try and do that. Sometimes it might be easier just to say, well, listen, do you know what? If that's the way of things, okay, grand, I'll head off somewhere else. But it does bring us on to, coming back into the option of Miovski. I can't not talk about him, because it looks like we will be turning a lot of focus and attention towards him. He will be getting more minutes now. I read an article earlier on today, Kev, that was it was actually from Neil Warnock, who, I think he had 8 games with Miovski up at Aberdeen, and he really highly rated him. But he does mention around things like you need to give him time, you need to give him minutes, etc. I couldn't really agree with a lot of that based on it's not as if he hasn't had minutes. And he has had games. I don't think he started a game for us since February. Obviously, Scottish Cup involvement, everything else okay, that's grand. My hope is, and I don't think I'm putting folding money on it just yet, but my hope is that goal against Dundee United gives him that uplift in confidence. And again, we can turn our focus to him and say, look, you're going to play a really big part in this. And you've effectively got 6 games to give us everything that you possibly can. And if you can, and we can get the results that we're looking for, you're going to win the league.
Well, that's that. I mean, certain players here are playing for the Rangers' future, right? Miovski is one of them. I don't doubt that for a minute. So you never want to see a teammate pull up injured, right? You never want to do that. But he has got to be sitting there saying, okay, this is my chance. This is make or break. If I hit form now, I can, more not single-handedly, of course, but I have a big say in the destination of this league title. Certain podders on here that I will not mention, you, Cammy, have a large love for Kyle Lafferty, who was famous for turning up in the crucial times of the season.
Sir, Kyle Lafferty.
There's certain times that you can make your name for Rangers in Old Firm games. You can make them through consistency over years, and you can make your name in title run-ins. There is a chance here for someone to make themselves a Rangers hero. Does the fact that Chermiti has now become used to playing in a 2, albeit with a different partner, does that help Miovski now? Does he have more settled a role if he was to start, or even come off the bench with that? Because earlier in the season, the few times that they did get a chance together, Chermiti was not in a great place. So that could help. Mikey Moore has come on leaps and bounds over the last couple of months. As a team, we're now creating more chances. Is this a good time now to put Miovski in there when we will be, hopefully, in theory, continuing this run of creating more chances rather than, like we said earlier on, 20, 30 minutes of knocking the ball between defensive mid, right back, left back, centre back, when Super Ali at his prime wouldn't have been able to score a goal when you don't create anything for him. So there's lots of things that have changed since Miovski really got a run in the team. And it's up to him. But as an agent, as his agent, as his manager, like we've just said here, there's your chance. Now is the chance to prove that you belong to be at this club. Listen, we've all seen Miovski score for a really poor Aberdeen side, right? Albeit playing for Aberdeen is far different than playing for Rangers. But we know we can finish. And if we can create some of these chances over the next couple of weeks, and he takes at least a couple of them, then we'll be in a good place. But I've never given up on Miovski. Same as like Ant-Man, I've not given up on him either. But I would really love it if they could produce some stuff over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, isn't it? And like you say, as a group, we spoke a lot about the individual mentality, but the group mentality has to be whether you start or whether you come on as a sub or you play 90 minutes or 10 minutes, it makes no difference. Everyone has to be able to step in and support us. Because listen, and we're going to talk about fixtures in just a second, but everybody knew, Kev, that irrespective of how the fixtures fell, they were all going to be massive based on where we were to where we are now. That picture hasn't changed. So it's been very much the idea of the transition that Danny Rowe's been able to come in to be able to recover us back in from the position that we were, to be able to sit second in the league within touching distance of being able to try and get the trophy. But now what it has to be is probably a doubling down of those efforts from the group collective to say, let's work on this and let's work on each other and let's praise when we praise, let's hold each other accountable when we have to. But ultimately now it has to almost become the bunker mentality, if that makes sense.
It does. My only worry, I'm not really concerned at what order we played the fixtures. I did not think the random SPFL computer, and I'll pause here for dramatic effect, would throw out any of us playing any of the other title contenders on the last day, because I think the the old sport and integrity would come into play. I seem to remember a couple of years ago when Aberdeen had to go to Parkhead, where they hadn't won since I think the Second World War, to deny us second, and somehow they managed to get it over the line that day.
Was that the same season? No, I'm sure that they played them at Parkhead, where basically Aberdeen had to win against Celtic, and Celtic then could come to Ibrox to confirm winning it at Ibrox. I'm sure that, and I think Aberdeen won pretty comfortably. I think I'm right in saying, but yeah, it's the same point though. I'll go back to that word. It's fuckery.
So that's my only worry with the fixtures. If we were to win it, I would absolutely just love to win it that Wednesday night. I think it is against Hibs. If we could somehow get all our ducks in a row. I mean, I've spoken about this on the preview before as well. I don't know if it's better or worse for some teams playing at home, because on paper, of course, everyone wants home games, right? But when it's as tight and as nervous as this, we know how. We've all been at Ibrox, Cammy, where it's been a nervous day and we're not playing well and we're struggling, and you really need to get these points on the board, and the crowd doesn't help. It's more of a hindrance than anything else. So with us having away games, I'm hoping, with the sort of looking on the light side of things, that hoping that the away crowds, and again that's a topic for another day, the few hundreds that will be there at these games, can actually spur the team on, because it's, I mean, we were talking about the other day in the chat, how many do you think we actually need to win? Because I think I seen a stat the other day where, was it Stevie Clifford that came out with it, said that no team has won all of their games after the split. Now, of course, there's various factors in there. If a team wins the league, they probably don't need to win all of their games and such like. But I as a Rangers supporter will never be confident going to Parkhead, right? I remember going there with Loudrup, McCoy's, Gascoigne and all that, and you were never confident going there. On paper, over the last couple of months to a year, we should be fine with going there. But I'm never confident going there. Tynecastle was probably our worst, or one of the worst performances under Danny Rule. But again, this will be a different Tynecastle we go to, because when we last played them there, they were at the sort of top of that. Oh, it's an all, been top of the league. Oh, we're going to be ahead of Rangers, blah, blah, blah. But now it's squeaky bum time. And if we don't have experience in our squad, there's none in that Hearts team. So again, this is it going to be a hindrance for them playing at Tynecastle? I know Ewan Cameron's been going a wee bit radio rental on Twitter, posting videos that he's not happy with how the fixtures have panned out. But yes, we always knew we were going to be facing a bit of an uphill task with the away games, but I'm hopeful that we can actually turn that into a positive.
Listen, the fixtures are always going to be what they were going to be, right? I do get that. What I don't understand as to why we are either playing at the same time or after Celtic are playing, which seems to be a nice benefit. But looking at the fixtures on the calendar, that game at Tynecastle, that horrific kind of 5:30 kick-off in the bank holiday Monday, just bizarre. But yeah, we have to put up with it, I suppose. But what I think we need to really turn our attention to is that 6-day last week. So Celtic on the 10th, our final home game, as you mentioned, against Hibs on the 13th. That's on the Wednesday, and then obviously the weekend is the final weekend. That's the Saturday. So it's 3 games in 6 days, and there's almost a part of me that's quite pleased that we're able to get into that last furlong coming down the home straight, and how we're able to try and get to it. What will be interesting, and I think this is where it ties into the game at Tynecastle, is we've obviously got a bit of a wait until we get to that point, and there's still football to be played, right? So obviously this picture can change. This picture will change game on game, right? It's not even week on week; it's game on game at the moment for all 3 teams. But that game against Hearts at Tynecastle, I think you're right, because what I think you do have to give Hearts credit for is that whenever they've had a setback, that actually they've been able to recover quickly. And when you come down to a handful of games, at that point it'll be 3 games left. how quickly do you recover, knowing that obviously one of them, well, your final one, is going to be the game at Parkhead. So the optics in terms of how you look at it, just, I mean, they vary so much in terms of what happens. Ultimately, we can't look too much beyond Falkirk at this weekend and the two remaining home games against Motherwell and against Hibs. Ibrox will be sold out for Motherwell. I've got zero doubt about that. And depending on how the picture looks when we get to the 13th of May, it could also be another massive sellout. My God, I hope that it is, because we're still very, very much in contention for it. But we might have that weird scenario you mentioned it earlier on, Kev, that I would bite your hand off for it right now, that Wednesday night at home to Hibs, that could be it. That could be, it could come down to finalising it on that particular evening, and then the weekend games become redundant. That's where it's so thin margins.
I also wonder how the police are feeling, because I wonder, after obviously the last Old Firm game and the sort of spotlight that were on the police, I don't know how they would feel if one of the three teams will be heading to Glasgow with the trophy on the last day. So again, you wonder how much planning is went into that. But I would very much like to make those last fixtures redundant if we could. And I say, I'm sure there'll be more than one non-native Falkirk fan in the home end that day. But as you said, we've got a lot of football to play. We've got Falkirk this weekend. We'll need to turn all our attention to this. A team we've not beaten so far this season. 2 attempts. I say none of the games were particularly great from our point of view. Falkirk, of course, come up this year. They've been really impressive. I don't think anyone would have tipped them for a top 6 finish. The work that John McGlynn's done there has been remarkable.
It staggers me he's still at Falkirk. I'm genuinely stunned that a bigger team haven't come in for him.
I thought Aberdeen might have had a look, despite the fact that they went all the way around the world and then went for Stephen Robertson.
Went to Paisley,
but again, the job he's done is remarkable. Sort of changed his ways a wee bit, and when he sort of aged a wee bit, and usually I think we all think that managers get more defensive as they get older, but he's sort of changed, and Falkirk are a really good footballing team to watch. If a couple of years ago, I don't know if you remember, Tynecastle tended to be the games I would look at if we weren't playing this Saturday. But Falkirk this year have been really good to watch, along with Motherwell. A lot of good football has been played in the Scottish Premier League this season. But yeah, I mean, they won't be any pushovers, as we know. And again, we'll look a bit ahead slightly, because Motherwell, the last couple of fixtures, they look as if they've run their race. They've had a wonderful season. Funny enough, they played Falkirk last week, and it was a back and forward game, but you hope they've maybe run out of steam when they come to Ibrox next week, or the following week, I should say, after the Cup break. But from our point of view, Cammy, everything's on Falkirk this week, one game at a time. You've got 6 goals, 6 finals, and if you win them, then it's yours, it's in your hands. And like we always say, the only team that can stop Rangers winning this league is Rangers.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, there's not going to be any talk, and this is why I think it's good to mention John McGlynn, because there won't be any talk of, now that the positions are solidified, that Falkirk can then start to put their feet up. I mean, it might be completely different when we get back there in the middle of May, and by Christ, I hope there is, but they'll still have enough to be able to try and play for, that they want to finish the season well. It has been a good season for them overall, and I think you're right. I think there is a good quality of football in there. But if you, and again, it's as simplistic cliche, isn't it? But listen, if you can't beat teams like Falkirk, you don't deserve to win the league anyway. And that's where I do want to kind of emphasise that point around what I expect Rangers to do is not treat some of these teams, and I think we did it against Hearts, I think we did it against Hibs, I think we did it at Motherwell, against Motherwell, Ibrox, where we almost looked a little bit timid and we looked too nervous to be able to try and come out the traps. And it relates back to that point that we talked about with Asgard. Sometimes you just need somebody to get hold of the ball and drive forward with it and maybe beat a couple of guys and create something out the back of it. But it's because you have the quality within your team to be able to do it. If Rangers can't show that quality, then we'll get what we deserve. And so right now, as things stand, it is about being able to say to whatever team takes the field on Sunday afternoon, you're going to have to look at these players and say, this is a step. And I know everyone's talking about the cup finals and all the rest of it, and Danny Rose mentioned that, and he's talked about, the hunter versus the hunted and all. I get all of those kind of things as well. But at this point in time, what Rangers have to be able to do is they're going to have to maintain a calm head, because the way how the fixtures have kind of went out as well, we know that there will be scoreboard pressure. But I think we've seen that. We've seen that in the last few weeks where we've been able to respond appropriately, and where we have to. Aberdeen is a great example of that, where Hearts got a very narrow win. I wasn't going to say fortunate because I think that's fair, but they got a very narrow win on Saturday afternoon, so therefore it's over to us and we have to do that. And that is exactly the scenario that's going to happen across the course of the next few weeks. So it's going to have to come down to what we've been saying for a couple of months now, is what we want this Rangers team is to show confidence, belief in itself. And to be honest with you, Kev, they've set that up really well, because I don't know how you can take a team that has scored so many goals within the last 180 minutes worth of football and then say, right, well, Falkirk will be a different kettle of fish. Let them worry about us. Don't let your mind get to a space of, well, as you say, we've no beaten them this season and they're in a good space. You can't think like that. You've got to be able to just to go, we are the problem for them. They are not the problem for us.
Well, this is what I mentioned last week, was like when Hearts got that, what game was it we kicked off? Was it Aberdeen, where they got a late winner, right? And we weren't going into Ibrox going, oh no, that's raging. You were going, it's a bit annoying.
But you would have went into Ibrox absolutely bouncing before a ball had been kicked, because you knew that Hearts dropped points.
Yeah,
and that's the swing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but you weren't like, oh Jesus, man, that's the whole world end. You just thought, that's a bit annoying. Let's go and just batter this home, and we did it. We done it at the weekend where we had to win the game 3 times. Now I'd rather we just went out and won it once. It'd make the blood pressure a bit better. But if we'd scraped that 1-0, then it looks like the sort of perception is that you're hanging on and you're just keeping in there. But we didn't. We went out and scored a lot of goals, and I'd love to do that again this weekend. No matter what happens on Saturday, if they win, lose or draw, we go out and I'd love to really hammer Falkirk. Like, I'm not talking like hammer, but like a good 3-0 comprehensive done in the first half, and then move on to the next game and do that to Motherwell. And then it just sets in the other team's mindset of, we need to win because they're not dropping anything. And that's sometimes where it's affected us in the past, where I think, who was it that spoke about it? Was it Stephen Davis or Defoe after that infamous Dubai break, or Scott Arfield it might have been, where we would slip up but Celtic kept winning, and they can't control that. If we could go out and just keep winning games here, and it sounds really simplistic when we say it like this, right? But if we could go out with a couple of stronger performances and put all the pressure on them, because we weren't expected to be in this title race. I think we were 50-1 when the manager came in to win the league, which is ridiculous for a Rangers side, given the way we'd started the league. We've no right to be here. Hearts will feel a lot of pressure because they've been top since, I don't know what, August or something, September. And the worst thing in sport is a losing lead, and they've seen that lead whittled down. Celtic, of course, will always feel pressure because of the dominance that they've had, unfortunately for ourselves, over the last couple of years. But we should just be going to, I should say, Cammy, confident, go on the front foot, go and take the game to Falkirk. They're sitting, I think it's 5 points away for Hibs. They will say they're aiming to catch Hibs, but they'll be absolutely delighted with top 6. And we've all seen teams that if they go a couple of goals down, I'm not saying they'll chuck it, Cammy, right? But they won't put as much in there as if it was maybe 3 or 4 months ago. It's just a mental aspect of the game. Hopefully their race will be run. Well, of course, until they play Hearts and Celtic, then I hope they pick it back up again. But no, I'd love to really go on the front foot early, no matter what happens on Saturday, get a couple of goals, and just sort of shove that scoreboard pressure where the sun doesn't shine.
Yeah, that is exactly it. And you can only control what you can control, Kev. Right? So I think that we're all wise enough to know that. I think that for me, the most important thing as things stand at the moment is it's just about having that belief in yourself. And even if it's not going your way, you mentioned earlier on, whether it's tight or let's say, you're 3-0 up at half time, fantastic. Right, okay, I get that. But even if you have to scrape a 1-0 win, it's about staying true to course and don't worry or panic that it won't come. You just have to continue to create chances throughout the 90 minutes. And listen, I don't think there's a single Rangers fan listening to this that would say the best I can give you right now is 6 1-0 wins and all the goals are scored in the 90 minutes. If you can give me that right now, happy days. That's exactly what we want. But I'll caveat that by saying I do want to beat Celtic 10-0 at Parkhead. That would be hilarious, even though they seem to have made up with their fans as well. So, yeah, it's funny how these things work.
Can you imagine Andy McGowan if it was 6-1-0 wins in the 90th minute? Wouldn't you go up and visit him at Gartnavel?
Well, I was going to say that or at the crematorium. Right, listen, that will do us for this week, folks. Thank you very much for listening. It's been a pleasure to talk to you as always. I'd like to, if I can, take a moment and just direct you towards a fantastic article that Rangers published on their website earlier on Thursday afternoon, and that is regarding young Aaron Kerr, who's out on loan at Stirling Albion. The reason why I mention it is because it's a fantastic article that's been produced by the Rangers Youth Development Company, who we are delighted to be sponsored by. Please go on and have a read at that. We are eternally grateful, not only for the support for Heart and Hand, but also for the Academy and the over £12.5 million that the RYDC has put in. Thanks very much to you for all of the goodies that you bought, the bricks, the cups. If you take part in the Rangers Lotto, anything like that as well, they will make sure that they can fund as much money into the Academy as possible. Please jump on to check out that article. And Kev, just to make me feel really, really old, 40 years since Graham Souness. Oh, I'm not 21 anymore. I genuinely believe that my dreams of playing for Rangers are starting to fade pretty rapidly now.
You never know, mate. You never know. But aye, 40 years. I mean, Souness was just before my time. To me, it's Walter Smith as a Rangers manager, but it's a period in history where you can't help but fall in love with. I happen to know a wonderful audiobook and book that was written by, I don't know if you've heard of the author, Martin Ramsey. Have you heard of him?
No.
He's quite a handsome boy. But I was listening to that again on the way back from Salou over the weekend, and so many things that were true in 1986 about going for a title are still very true to this day. But yeah, I mean, who can't help but love the Rangers Revolution, led by Mr. Souness. And I think he's actually following in your footsteps and appearing at New Edmonton House in a couple of weeks, I believe.
Oh yeah, well they'll certainly hear a lot of good stories from Graham. I know that Davies had the pleasure of being alongside him at some of our international events as well. So listen, just if Danny Rule can join Graham Souness as a league winning manager, then yeah, I think he's starting on a good path.
Yes, and he would get his mural up in the Blue Room, hopefully. It would be well deserving given where we were and where we hope to be given, or over the next few weeks, I should say.
It's a good point, actually. I've meant to start my GoFundMe to get the murals painted over with a big massive portrait of Kyle Lafferty. I'm going to have to get onto that. That'll be my next step, I think. Yeah, well, and I know that people want to put money into it because of how important he was to Rangers.
In that black strip?
Yeah, exactly. Right, folks, that will do us for this week. My thanks to Paul Lee and to Mike Lee and to Paul Myers. David will be back with you on Monday's flagship to unpack our trip to Falkirk. So thank you all for listening, and my special thanks to Kev Armstrong for coming along and joining me this week. Thank you, buddy.
Always a pleasure, mate.
If you'd like to hear more from Kev and his preview gang, please feel free to jump on to patreon.com/Heart and Hand. The boys do a phenomenal job. Every single game, irrespective of opponent, you will always get a preview. And Kev, I'd like to say on behalf of everyone at Heart and Hand as well, yourself, Steve, and everyone who's been involved in the preview across the course of this season, you boys have absolutely knocked out the park. So very, very well done for all your hard work.
Thank you, mate. I just host, so I just knock the ball with Stevie and he knocks it out the park. And the lads do a wonderful job. And if anyone would like to come and join us, please feel welcome, although they do tend to last about an hour and a half, so you do tend to start them a couple of days before the actual game.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I will give you that. Right, folks, that will do it from me for this week. I'll be back with you next week. Yeah, really look forward to speaking to you then. But thanks so much for listening. Bye bye.